To some, money means everything. My name is William Grant. My wife Cindy and our twin children Mike and Lindy have lived since they were 15 on the ranch my grandparents left me near the small town of Justin, about 50 miles from Fort Worth, just off Highway 20. Cindy and I were childhood sweethearts from the age of 10. We grew up together and were inseparable until Cindy went to college to study art and history. I, on the other hand, went to work for my father in the construction business, building and fixing just about anything that came our way. Most of our work was contracted to local authorities to build and maintain public buildings such as schools and libraries, so our work base was strong. We also did a lot of work for the local Air Force base. Let me tell you a little about myself and Cindy. My parents weren't rich, but we were fine. My father was in the construction business, and my mother did the accounting and looked after me and my younger sister, Karen. I was a late bloomer and didn't reach my full height until my teens. Even then, I was only 5'10" and 180 pounds. My father said I couldn't lead a construction crew if they didn't respect me, and since we had a lot of ex-convicts, Dad felt I needed support. One day, Dad called me into his office and explained that although I was working part-time on site and building muscle, the average worker would make mincemeat of me if I tried to impose my authority and if I couldn't control the work crew. I would be useless to him. He then introduced me to the head of his company, Patrick. "William, this is my manager, Patrick. Now Patrick is also my enforcer. He makes sure people behave well at work, and if they tell him something, he takes them behind the barn and explains how everything works. Patrick was a Green Beret, so no one argues with him twice. Pat is going to teach you how to take care of yourself for an hour every night." Thus began a long and painful communication with Patrick. I learned to fight and defend myself, and I learned to ignore the pain and keep fighting. However, my mother fussed over me every time I came home right there, cursing about every split lip and bruise. Cindy, on the other hand, came from a wealthy family who genuinely disapproved of our friendship and tried to break us up, which of course made us even more determined to remain friends. Things changed one evening when Cindy went to a frat party and drank too much. I was driving home from my last class with Patrick when my cell phone rang. It was Cindy's number, so I answered, but it wasn't Cindy, it was one of her friends, Pam. "Bill, can you get here as quickly as possible? Cindy is crazy, and a couple of guys are trying to get her into their car. I think they are planning something very bad. I called the campus police, but no one is answering. The message comes straight through to the answering machine. Give me the address, and I'll be there as quickly as I can. Don't let them get away." She gave me the address, and I was determined. As I approached the address, I saw a commotion outside the hostel. Cindy's friend stood in front of the car and refused to move. I blocked their exit with my truck. I jumped up, ran to the side of the car, and looked inside. Cindy was lying in the back seat. At that moment, the campus police vehicle's lights flashed. After receiving statements, they took the 3 athletes into custody. Pam and I helped Cindy into my truck, and the 3 of us drove Cindy home. Cindy's father was furious that I had allowed Cindy to get into such a state, and was about to hit me when Pam came between us and explained what had really happened. Cindy's father immediately calmed down and apologized. Cindy's parents thanked me for saving their daughter. After this incident, my relationship with her parents became much better. I was even invited to dinner and introduced to some of their friends as Cindy's savior. Cindy and I started dating seriously, and 6 months later I asked her to marry me, and the following year we got married. Cindy was the perfect wife for me, except that in one area we never had enough money. She came from money, and of course all her friends had money, but we lived on what I made. I was slowly rebuilding the house, but not fast enough for Cindy. In fact, Cindy's biggest fault was that she was always comparing our lifestyle to that of her rich friend. She wanted this year's car, new furniture, shoes, and clothes. We had endless arguments about money, why my father didn't pay me more, and when the house would be finished. Cindy often went out with her rich friends. I was invited a couple of times, but they bragged about how rich they were compared to us, so I stopped going there. This suited me quite well and allowed me to continue working around the house. Although I worked for my father's construction company, my first love was engineering. I've always enjoyed taking things apart, trying to figure out how they work and how to improve them. So I went back to college, well, community college, taking night classes, and ended up getting a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. I stayed in my father's company, but built a small workshop next to the house, bought a used lathe, a bench drill, and a milling machine. This came in handy when one of our piling machines broke down and we found parts were no longer available due to its age. I took it apart and made the parts with a few innovations of my own. The damn thing worked better than ever and Dad gave me a bonus. I spent time in my workshop upgrading a diesel pump that I had applied for a patent on, which was accepted as a patent pending. Over the next few years, I designed and built several other innovations, mainly injectors and pumps, all of which were accepted as patent pending. When the children were born, Cindy became a housewife. She was a great mother and loving wife. The sex was fantastic. This continued until the children went to school and Cindy became bored. One evening after the kids had gone to bed, Cindy sat on my lap. "Bill, now that the kids are in school, I was thinking about getting a job teaching art and history at the local school, and the extra money would be helpful." Where did this come from? I talked to one of the mothers, whose husband is the director, and she said that they need a history teacher, since the current one is pregnant and will leave soon. We could spend the extra money renovating the house. It sounded like a good idea, and as a bonus, it meant she'd have less free time to spend with her rich, slacker friends, so I agreed. Everything went well for the next 10 years. Cindy would take the kids to school and start work, and at the end of the day, she would take them home and start cooking dinner. I would come home about an hour later, eat, do some housework, watch TV with my family, and go to bed. Sex was reduced to once or twice a week, usually on weekends. I didn't really care because I was usually tired after a day of work, just like Cindy. However, there was still a part of Cindy that wanted more. I'm almost done renovating the house. It went from a simple one-story, three-bedroom ranch to a two-story, five-bedroom ranch. Now I am building a swimming pool. One night after the kids had gone to bed, Cindy sat on my lap, and just like before, she wanted something. She saw an advertisement in the local newspaper for an art gallery manager position with a salary almost double her current salary and wanted to apply. I knew art was her first love, so I agreed. She applied, was interviewed, and waited. I got home from work, and as soon as I walked in the door, Cindy rushed at me screaming, "I got it, I got it." Having difficulty staying on my feet, I asked, "What did you get?" "Job, stupid. I'm the new manager of the art gallery that's being built on Main Street." I was happy for her, of course, and we went out to dinner to celebrate. Cindy had to go to Dallas for a 2-week training course before accepting her new position. Since this was a new gallery, Cindy was in charge of the design of all exhibits along with 2 staff members. She told me that she had met the owner, Paul Gaudier, who owns more than 100 of these galleries throughout the US and Europe, and is considered a billionaire, and he is scheduled to attend the grand opening on Saturday. Saturday came, I was dressed in my only suit, but thought I looked good. I waited at the bottom of the stairs for Cindy to come down. I looked at her and almost choked. She was wearing a cocktail dress with a neckline that was too low and a side slit that showed too much thigh. "Wow, Cindy, you look great, but you're showing too much flesh for my liking. Where and when did you buy this dress? I haven't seen it before." "I know, honey. Paul bought it for me, said I should look good for the opening. Do you like it?" "Yes, I like it, but it makes you look like a woman of easy virtue. And when did you go shopping with another man without telling your husband? He probably picked out your underwear too." "Actually, yes. Do you like it?" And she lifted her dress to reveal panties smaller than a child's handkerchief. I was furious and let her know it. "Go back to the bedroom and put on some normal panties, or we're not going anywhere." She noisily returned to the bedroom and appeared 2 minutes later, lifting her dress to show other panties slightly larger than the previous ones. Satisfied, she shouted at me, then walked past and got into her car. Well, What are you standing for? Sit down. Cindy took us to the gallery, except it was her car. I didn't like driving it because it reminded me of a little toy car. I preferred my truck. We arrived at the gallery early so she could greet guests upon arrival. When we entered, I saw a tall, handsome, middle-aged man waiting for us and introduced himself. Bill, this is Paul, my boss. We shook hands, and then, to my complete amazement, Cindy left me and stood next to Paul, who immediately hugged her. Before I could say anything, Cindy was called to explain something to one of her assistants, but I was furious. At this time, a rather unpleasant-looking man approached to talk to Paul, who introduced him as his bodyguard Max. As the evening went on, I saw Cindy less and less, and when I realized that I had been sitting alone for over an hour, I went to look for her. She was standing talking to a couple about the painting and gesturing towards the canvas, but what infuriated me was Paul standing next to her with a hand on her shoulder, as if they were a couple. I walked up to Cindy and took his hand off her shoulder, saying, "Don't touch what doesn't belong to you, boy." He looked at me and just grinned, then walked away. Cindy turned to me and almost screamed, "How dare you humiliate me like that? We were just talking." "You might have just been talking, and he was groping you." "Don't be ridiculous and stop acting like a petulant schoolboy. I'm not an 18-year-old girl anymore, and I don't need your protection." As soon as she said this, she realized that she had gone too far, but she did not back down, although she knew that she was wrong. "Well, in that case, since you've been ignoring me all evening, I'll go home. See you later." With that, I left and took a taxi home. Cindy got home a little after midnight, and I was already in bed pretending to be asleep. The next morning, a quiet resentment awaited me. To hell with it, I went fishing and had a relaxing day. When I returned, she was not there. She took the children from their parents and returned only after 8. "We had dinner at Mom's. I hope you prepared something for yourself. I'm going to take a shower and go to bed early." She went upstairs, and I heard the sound of water. I told the kids to get ready for bed as tomorrow was a school day. The next 2 weeks were no better, not much talking, and definitely no sex. On the third Saturday, Cindy came home and said she wanted to talk to me. "Look, Bill, I know you were mad at me for the way I acted at the opening, but it wasn't necessary, and Paul wants to make it up to us. He invited us to spend the weekend at his lake house. There will be 2 other couples there, and we could have a barbecue and go on his boat. You could even go fishing. What do you think?" I saw that this was important to her, so I agreed. The following Saturday, we left the kids with my parents and drove the truck to his house. Cottage hardly seemed an appropriate word for this 5-room lakeside property, not a single neighbor in sight, and I learned there was no cell phone service, only a landline and dedicated ISDN computer service. There were 3 other cars parked outside, all 4WD, as the last 2 miles from the main road were quite challenging. We were greeted at the door by Paul, Max, and 2 other couples, Tom and Margaret, and Phil and Susan. We said hello, shook hands, and I noticed that other couples avoided looking me in the eyes. This alerted me, and I felt that something was wrong here. After an afternoon barbecue, Tom and Phil said they were going fishing and asked if I wanted to join. Cindy said she didn't mind, so I went with them. We took the boat out to the lake, stopped the engine, and started fishing. A few hours passed, and I said it was time for us to head back. Tom and Phil looked a little embarrassed, but agreed. When we returned to the dock, I noticed that Cindy, Paul, and Max were nowhere to be seen. Only Margaret and Susan were sitting reading. Once we tied up the boat, I walked up to the wives and asked where Cindy had gone. They both didn't look up and simply said she had gone for a walk with Paul. I asked which direction, and Susan pointed to the right. I was furious, but instead of walking along the path, I walked in the opposite direction to confuse possible observers, and after a while I walked parallel to the path at a brisk pace. About half a mile later, I saw Max sitting on a log smoking. He didn't notice me, so I kept walking. After another 100 yards, I heard voices. I crept up to the source of the sounds and saw that Paul and my wife were having sex. I took out my phone, took a few photos and a short video. My marriage was destroyed, but revenge was just beginning. I returned to the house and went to our bedroom to think. An hour later, I heard Cindy's voice, and she entered the room. "Hi, Bill, you came back early. I didn't expect you until dark. How were you doing?" "Not really, but I saw a deer and a doe. It was interesting. When we returned, I decided to catch up with you on a walk, but apparently I missed. How was your walk?" Cindy didn't answer, but looked guilty, then went into the dining room. I followed her. We all sat down to dinner, prepared by Margaret and Susan. At dinner, I noticed that other couples avoided meeting my gaze, and every time I looked at Max or Paul, they smirked. I realized that something would happen that night. After dinner, while the women were cleaning up, I looked around and realized that if I sat with my back to the front door, I could see what was happening behind me in the reflection of the glass cabinet opposite. I also put the phone in my shirt pocket and turned on the recording, feeling that I might need this as evidence later. After a while, we all sat down at the table, except for Max, who sat behind and to the left of me, but I saw him in the reflection. Cindy stood up and announced that it was time for bed, and she would spend the night with Paul. I stood there and thought, who is this woman? So that's why you invited us here to seduce my wife and trample on me. Tom answered instead of Paul. Listen, Bill, it's not as bad as it seems. Paul has this weirdness. He likes to seduce married women in front of their husbands. He gets pleasure from the fact that the husband is in the next room. Then he becomes a good friend and helps you as best he can, and you and Cindy can continue on as if nothing happened. Please don't make a scene or Max will beat you. I've seen him do this to husbands he didn't like. Tell me, Tom, did he do this with you and Phil? They lowered their heads, and the two women looked guilty. Well, that's all I need to know. And you're still talking to him? You should be ashamed. Cindy. Bill, don't act like a petulant schoolboy. It's only for one night, and besides, Paul put $200,000 into our joint account for the privilege. Why, Cindy, why are you doing this, knowing that I will divorce you as soon as we get home? First of all, Bill, you can't afford a divorce. I'll take your company, your pension fund, your house, and half of our savings. Plus, I'll turn our kids against you, and you'll have to pay child support while I sleep with whoever I want at your expense. And why? Look at Paul. He is successful, tall, broad-shouldered, handsome. What woman wouldn't want to spend the night with him? He's actually just a piece of shit who seduces married women to humiliate their husbands, and that's what he gets his kicks from. He's below worms. As I spoke, I watched Max in the reflection of the closet. He moved to stand behind me, and when I finished speaking, he swung his weapon. I disarmed him. When I looked back at the others, I saw 6 shocked faces. So here's your bodyguard, Paul. I pointed the gun at Paul. I noticed a dark stain spreading down Paul's pants. Oh, look, the male wet himself. Who's the male now? I cocked the gun. I asked you a fucking question, asshole. Please don't shoot me, I'm sorry, there's no harm. Shut the hell up. Tom, go to my truck. In the box behind the cab, you will find a drawstring bag. Bring it. Tom returned a few minutes later, and I tied Max's hands and feet and put him in a corner. Okay, let's play truth or death. I ask questions, and if you tell the truth, you will live. You first, Paul. When did you first sleep with my wife? Paul looked at me and looked like he was about to cry, but then he grinned and said, on opening night, after everyone else had left. How many times since then, including sex in the woods this afternoon? I've slept with her almost every day for the last 3 weeks. Margaret, how often did you sleep with Paul after he humiliated your husband? She just looked at the floor and fidgeted with her legs. Okay, Paul, how often have you slept with Margaret and Susan? Whenever I went to their gallery, sometimes I would let Max sleep with them. I heard movement when I turned to Phil and saw Susan. The fucking bitch told me it was a one-time thing. And with that, he walked into his bedroom, slamming the door. I looked at Tom, who was looking at his wife with disgust. You damn bastard thought you were our friend. Well, you can take her. I don't want to see her anymore. I looked at Paul and Cindy. Well, Cindy, my unfaithful wife, you are now a woman of easy virtue. How does it feel? What? I'm not a woman of easy virtue. Why do you say that? Paul gave you $200,000 to sleep with him all night. That's money for sex, which is the definition of a prostitute. Congratulations, you're up. Now that you've been paid, go to the bedroom and earn your money. Go ahead, both of you enjoy. Because in the morning, Cindy, you'll have to find a new place to live. Don't look so smug, Paul. When Tom and Phil realize you have no defense, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. Now it's settled, I'll go home and pack my things. Goodbye, Cindy, and good luck. Cindy. Wait, Bill, what about me? How will I get home? Please don't leave me. I made a mistake. Can't we at least talk about it? A mistake is when you set the oven too high and burnt your dinner. What you did was intentional. You were quite happy to see me get beaten up by Max, so you could sleep with the bastard and humiliate me in the process. How did you manage that? By the way, I filmed this and will send it to all your friends and family. Have a nice day and rot in hell, you piece of shit. I left them standing there in a puddle of his urine and went to my truck, took my pocket knife from the glove box, and cut the valves off all the cars. Then I took the gun apart into its component parts and threw them into the lake. Then I cut the landline and ISDN line so they couldn't call for help and would have to walk 2 miles to the main road. And just in case they had another way to get help using a boat, I broke the key in the ignition. I got in the truck and drove to the main road and headed home. As soon as I received a signal on my mobile, I called my parents and asked them to prepare the children to leave. When they asked why, I told them the short version. When my mother asked if I could forgive Cindy for the sake of the children, I sent them the notes I had made. My parents were shocked by the depth of Cindy's betrayal and agreed to help me in any way they could. Then I called my friend Frank, who owns a used car dealership, and asked him to meet me at my house and drop off a trailer. We arrived almost at the same time, and I explained what I wanted and why. He insisted on seeing the tapes and asked for a copy to show his wife Norma, Cindy's best friend, and of course I agreed. I asked Frank to remove all of Cindy's belongings and put them in trash bags in her car and move the car away from the house. At that time, I gathered all my belongings and the children's belongings and loaded them into my truck. I removed the hard drive from my desktop computer and emptied the safe and gun safe. All my tools and equipment were loaded into Frank's trailer for storage. I spent the next half hour sorting out our finances. I took all of our joint savings, leaving only the $200,000 that Cindy had earned with her body. I paid off the credit cards and canceled them, leaving her with just a checking account and debit card. I also went to the post office website and forwarded all mail to my parents' address. I made a final walk around the house and then set it on fire. The house was not visible from the city, so no one would call the fire department. By morning, all that would be left of it was a pile of ashes. Try living there, traitor. I then sent everyone on her contact list on her laptop and phoned the video I took with a note that said, "This is why I left, Cindy." A few days ago, I saw Frank's mobile home in the lot and asked if it was still for sale, and if I could buy it. He agreed, and we headed to his garage. He gave me a particularly good deal on my old truck and agreed to keep it out of sight since the police would be looking for the truck and not my new RV. Frank also offered to buy a trailer and an old Jeep Wrangler so I could park the RV and have transportation. I thought it was a great idea but couldn't afford it yet. He said not to worry, we'll figure it out later. We moved all my stuff from the truck to the motorhome. I said goodbye and went to my parents. When I arrived, Dad came out to look at the rig I was driving and looked at me in surprise. I explained that I needed a head start so my wife couldn't take the kids away from me. I call them children, but in reality they are almost 16. I went into the house, sat down with the children, and tried to explain what happened. They both wanted Cindy and I to be together and started crying. I explained that we would never get back together, but that I would give them the choice of who to stay with. I reluctantly showed them footage of their mother and Paul humiliating me and Cindy threatening to turn them against me. After much crying, they both wanted to stay with me. We loaded the rest of their belongings into the motorhome, said goodbye to our parents, and headed off to parts unknown. I wanted to get out of the state as quickly and as far as possible before Cindy could send the police after me. I drove all night, stopping only for gas and grocery shopping. Once I crossed the state line, I drove for another couple of hours looking for a campsite. I was on the verge of sleep when I saw the sign that said, "Camping here." I turned too fast and almost flipped the trailer. This woke me up, and I drove the next 2 miles to the campsite. I parked in an almost empty lot, walked to the single bunk, and collapsed, falling asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow. Cindy. After Bill left, I looked at Paul differently. I looked at the puddle of urine in which he stood and felt only disgust. What the hell had I done? Bill was always kind to me. He was an attentive and caring lover, and I had nothing to complain about. He was a fantastic father. In fact, he was a better father than I was a mother. He did everything for the kids, helped them with their homework, went to their sporting events, and spent weekends with them since I was always too busy. So why did I ruin it all for Paul and second-class sex? I wasn't going to spend the night with Paul, but he won't get his money back. I've already earned it. Now I need to try to repair our marriage. I used the children as weapons to get Bill back. In the morning, we all got dressed and got ready to go home. When Phil went to put his bags in the car, he came back and told us that all the tires were flat. We tried the landline, but had no luck. The ISDN was also missing, and there was no reception in any of the cameras. I couldn't even find mine. Bill must have taken it. Phil and Tom decided to go up to the main road and try to give them a ride into town. This left Paul, Margaret, Susan, Max, and I alone in the cabin. After what seemed like an eternity, a tow truck arrived with Phil and Tom to repair the cars. It took us a while to get back on the road. I asked Tom for a ride, and he agreed to take me home because I didn't want to drive Paul's car home, which would make Bill very angry. When we came to the end of the trip, I burst into tears. Our house was just a pile of smoking logs. I got out of the car and walked towards what was left of our house. That's when I noticed that my car was parked a safe distance from the house. I walked to my car and saw what I assumed were my belongings in the back seat, packed in trash bags. The keys were in the ignition, and the car started right up. I thanked Tom for taking me home, and they left. I drove back into town and stopped at a gas station to buy a cheap phone, but when I went to pay for it, they told me my credit card no longer worked, so I tried my debit card and it worked fine. I tried calling Bill, but they told me it was a blocked number. Then I called Bill's parents, and Bill's mom answered. "Hey, Grace, this is Cindy. Have you seen Bill? We had a fight. He ran away and isn't answering my calls." "Yes, Cindy, he told us what you did and showed us the video. We are very disappointed in you, so don't call us again." And then she hung up. I tried calling Norma. She answered on the fourth ring. "Hi, Norma. This is Cindy. Have you seen Bill? We had a fight, and he left." "No wonder, considering what you did to him. Don't be surprised. I saw the video. What made you do this and think Bill would support it? Whoever you called will know what you did because Bill sent the video to everyone you know, including your parents, so don't expect any sympathy from them. You do realize that your marriage is over and you may never see your children again, right?" "What do you mean?" "Bill took the kids and left, and I have no idea where he went, so don't ask. Now, if you don't mind, I have my family to take care of. Goodbye." I sat in shock and assessed my situation. I had no home, no husband, no children, no friends, and my family probably wouldn't talk to me. Then I remembered that my credit card no longer worked. I frantically turned on my laptop and logged into my bank account. All I had was the $200,000 Paul paid yesterday and a few $100s in my checking account. I quickly transferred $200,000 to my checking account. Now I had enough money for the foreseeable future. I checked into a hotel without talking and paid for a few nights of accommodation. I sat on the bed, looked in the vanity mirror, and cried. I have never felt more alone and scared in my life. Bill. I was woken up by my children, who needed to be fed. I went to the camp store, paid for 2 days of parking, and bought some supplies. When I got back to the van, The kids' water was boiling, so I made coffee and made breakfast for me and the kids. Cheerios, waffles with milk syrup for the kids, and strong coffee for me. After breakfast, I felt much better, but I still regretted the end of my marriage. I couldn't do anything about the divorce on Sunday, but had to meet with a lawyer on Monday. Monday morning, I called my lawyer, Gary Fuller, and made an appointment for that afternoon. I fed the children, unloaded the Jeep, and we went to my parents' house. I explained to them that I needed to meet with a lawyer this afternoon, and would they look after the children. They were, of course, delighted. I arrived at Gary's office at 3:00 p.m. and explained to him the circumstances and the financial steps I had taken. He said I did the right thing by protecting myself and leaving $200,000 in her account, thereby distancing myself from the money. Then the conversation went something like this. Bill, are you sure you want a divorce because you could lose your children? Additionally, it is in your best interest for children to regularly communicate with their mother to demonstrate good faith. You let me worry about it and don't ask questions you don't want answered. I want to hurt her the same way she hurt me, so go nuclear. I want scorched earth, and same to Gaudier, hit him with everything you can think of. Oh, and by the way, she admits on video that she was paid $200,000 to have sex with him. So how about you talk to your friend, the Daw, and arrest her for having sex for money? It's disgusting, I like it, I'll say the word. It can be expensive, are you sure? Money is not a problem. My parents said they will guarantee payment so that you are insured. Okay, Bill, when do you want her serviced? There's an open house at the gallery on Thursday, and it'll be a good time, preferably when it's packed with all those stuck-up bastards. Yes, I can arrange it. I may also strike Gauthier for alienation of affection and failure to abide by the company's morals provisions, as stated in your wife's contract. I'm not sure how far they'll go, but it will put them in an awkward position in front of the guests. Sounds perfect, do it. How do I stay connected? For instructions or private conversation, I will give you my email and Facebook information. If you have any documents, just send them to my parents, and they will make sure they reach me. I left Gary's office feeling like I had finally gotten my revenge. When I got to my parents' place to pick up the children, my mother asked us to stay the night since it was a long drive to the camp. I agreed, and we had a wonderful home-cooked meal, headed back early, and didn't return until after dark. The next morning after breakfast, I told the kids to call their mother and let her know they were okay. They called her on their social network, and she answered immediately. Hey kids, how are you, Dad? Hey Mom, yes, but he doesn't want to talk to you. We just called to let you know we're okay. Thanks, guys. It's great to hear from you both and talk. Where are you? I don't really know why you ask. You never cared where we were before as long as we were in your way. Baby, that's not true. I've always loved you, even if I didn't always show it. So what if you love us, but we don't see it? For us, you abandoned us just like you abandoned Dad. Well, we did as Dad said and called you, so bye, Mom. Cindy sat down and cried. Her perfect life just fell apart because of her desire for more. Monday. Cindy went to work as usual and opened the gallery. Everything went as usual. She half expected Paul to drop by for casual lunchtime sex and wondered how he would treat her after Saturday. When Paul didn't show up, she called his cell phone but didn't get an answer, so she continued getting ready for Thursday. She tried calling Bill several times but was unsuccessful, so she continued to act as if nothing had happened. She went to the bank in the afternoon to apply for a new credit card and open a new account, transferring half of the $200,000 into it. She then began looking for a place to stay because she couldn't stay in a motel indefinitely. She made several appointments to view rental properties the next day and then returned to her motel. Tuesday. Bill. We woke up early, had breakfast, and hit the road. I called one of my employees who was once imprisoned for forgery of documents and asked if he knew anyone who could make us false passports, and he said that he would contact me. I was heading to Canada, where I had an aunt who I knew would take us in for a few weeks while I looked for a place to live. Cindy. Cindy looked at several properties and eventually settled on a two-bedroom apartment next to the gallery. She was due to move in on Wednesday, so she had one more night at the motel. She called Paul to see if he would come to the opening night on Thursday, and he confirmed that he would. When she asked how he was feeling, he said that he was slowly getting better. When she asked about Max, he said that he was still in the hospital, but would be released soon. Cindy then contacted a lawyer to try to get Bill to talk to her and bring the children home, and set up a meeting for Wednesday. Cindy went to meet with a lawyer and explained her position and what she wanted. He asked what evidence Bill had about her cheating, and she admitted that she did it. She then asked about the children, and he explained that I had not broken the law since we were still married, but once the divorce started, I would be required to tell her where the children were and allow contact with them. She said she doubted I would divorce her because it would cost me too much. They then went through our finances, and the lawyer said she should be entitled to at least half of everything plus alimony, and they could use that to force me into a reconciliation. Cindy returned to work feeling much better. After lunch, she moved into her new apartment and began arranging it to her liking. When she went to bed, she was looking forward to the opening night of the gallery tomorrow. Bill, the person I contacted about new documents for me, and the children said to send photographs of my face, and he would sort everything out. I sent photos and asked how much it would cost so I could have the cash ready. He said $5 would be enough and arranged a time and place to meet in a few days. I found another remote campsite for a few days and settled in there. Instead of cooking in the RV, I took the kids to the nearest town where we found an all-you-can-eat restaurant and ate so much that the kids got sick on the way back to camp. I went to bed looking forward to Thursday and the surprise that awaited Cindy and her lover. Thursday. Bill. Bill continued his journey to Canada, staying only 1 or 2 nights at campsites. He made a short stop in the small town of Sweetwater to visit an engineering company that made most of the fuel pumps for the construction industry. He presented them with his development of a new fuel system. After a short demonstration of how the new system would improve the productivity and reliability of their customers, and the key point that it could be installed on existing equipment, the board of directors unanimously approved its development. They offered him $2 million for the patent, but Bill wanted $1 million plus 10 cents on every dollar for the next 10 years. This was agreed upon and contracts were signed. Bill also asked that the money be transferred to his father's account so that Cindy could not claim it as part of the settlement. Bill continued his journey to Canada, stopping in Oregon to meet his contact and pick up the false documents. Cindy woke up in her new apartment waiting for the gallery to open that evening. She dressed in a business suit, but with sexy lingerie, hoping to continue her romance with Paul. She spent the entire day in the gallery, showing people the exhibits and talking about the paintings and sculptures. At 7 in the evening, more important guests began to arrive, including the mayor and at least one congressman. Paul arrived shortly after and quickly led her to the back office and locked the door. They had sex. He opened the door and returned to the reception, leaving her to deal with the consequences. She returned to the reception and continued to play hostess, but noticed that several people were looking at her strangely and wondered if they knew what had just happened. The reception was in full swing when 2 men in work suits, accompanied by 2 sheriff's deputies, entered the gallery. One of them approached Paul and asked, "Excuse me, sir, you are Mr. Paul Gaultier?" "Yes, what do you want?" "Mr. Gaultier, you are being served with a subpoena." And he handed him a large envelope and left. Another man approached Cindy. "Are you Mrs. Cindy Grant?" "Yes, you are being served a subpoena." And he handed her a large envelope. The whole room went silent as Paul opened his envelope and found that he was being notified of his intention to file a lawsuit for alienation of affection. He crumpled the documents and left. Cindy opened her envelope and found divorce papers inside. She began to cry and sat down on the nearest chair. As she sat and cried, a sheriff's deputy approached her and asked, "Are you Mrs. Cindy Grant?" "Yes." And just when she thought it couldn't get any worse, he said, "Mrs. Grant, You are under arrest for having sex for money. Then he read her rights, handcuffed her, and led her away. The people gathered there were stunned. The reception turned into chaos, and everyone left. Friday. Paul. After leaving the reception last night, Paul called his lawyer to inform him that a subpoena had been served. His lawyer told him the case probably wouldn't go to trial because lawsuits for alienation of affection rarely succeed. However, if Mr. Grant files a lawsuit against the company for violating the moral standards specified in his wife's contract, it will be a different story, since Paul violated the moral code prohibiting interpersonal relationships in the office. If such an affair took place on company premises, and it can be proven, it could cost the company significant money. Paul thought about it and decided to call an online board meeting to discuss the problem. When all the board members met late that evening, Paul was surprised that the company had already been notified that a lawsuit had been filed. The company's legal department reviewed the evidence, and since Paul himself admitted that he had sex with Cindy on company property, the best they could hope for was an out-of-court settlement. Cindy sat in her cell crying. She tried to call Paul, but had no luck, so she called her parents, who didn't answer, then called Norma, who eventually answered. "Hey, Norma, please don't hang up on me. You're my last hope. Please can you come to court and get me out?" "Why were you arrested?" "I was arrested for having sex for money. I don't understand why." "Okay, I know that's not true, so I'll help you. I'll be there in a couple of hours." Norma called Bill to find out what was going on and if he knew about Cindy's arrest. "Hi, Norma, what can I do for you?" "Cindy just called me and said she was arrested. Do you know anything about it?" "Yeah, if you watch the video, you'll see Cindy admitting that she got $200,000 for a night with Paul Gaultier. That's having sex for money, so she was arrested. She will probably only get a fine and probation, but that will give her a criminal record and ruin her reputation. You hate her so much that you're willing to do this. After what she did to me, you can be sure I'm ready." "Okay, I see your point, but remind me to never become your enemy. Let's talk later." Bill. After speaking with Norma, I called my lawyer to see how things were going. When Gary told me about Cindy's appointment and arrest, I couldn't stop laughing. When I finally calmed down, I asked about the lawsuit Gary had sent to Gauthier's company, and he advised that they would probably be willing to settle out of court. Gary said he's suing Paul's company for $10 million, but they'll probably settle for $3 or $4 million as a more realistic amount. Gary said he would call me in a few days with the results and ended the call. I then opened an online gambling account and called my father, asking him to do the same. When my father asked why, I explained that we could play online poker in a private two-player game, and he could lose to me, which would give me income outside of tax laws and make it harder to track my money. I also told my father that a large amount would soon be transferred into his account and asked him to ensure that the appropriate taxes were paid on it, and the same would apply to other amounts that would be transferred. The father agreed, since the laws were not broken, only slightly bent. Cindy. When Norma got Cindy out of confinement, she took her to her new house and stopped by for a cup of coffee. "Cindy, what were you thinking when you did that to Bill, one of the nicest people I've ever met?" "Damn, I know. At first I started sleeping with Paul because I thought it was necessary to keep my job. I don't like him or anything, but I have to admit he's a great lover and I liked that. Then he asked to spend the night with him in his house. He wanted me to have sex with him while Bill was in the next room. He brought Max to make sure his husband didn't interfere. This time he made a mistake and Bill kicked Max's ass. I never knew he could do that. I thought he would force me to come home after this, but he didn't. He told me to go and earn the money I was paid and left. It never occurred to me that he would go to extreme measures and take the children. Do you know where he is? Not the slightest idea, and Frank doesn't know either. What will you do now? I will fight the divorce and try to force him to return the children. He emptied our account, leaving only the money Paul gave me, and closed our credit cards. I still have a job, but I don't know for how long. I even slept with Paul on opening day to keep my job, but he hasn't called since. I really love Bill, but I don't know how to fix this. I don't think you can, and if you keep sleeping with Paul, you never will. Get your head out of your ass and start thinking about how Bill feels after what you tried to do to him, and how you would feel if the situation was reversed. If I know Bill, you'll probably never see him or the kids again. You brought this on yourself, so you have to live with it. Do the right thing, sign the divorce papers, and let Bill live his life, and then you can move on. I don't want to move on, I want Bill back, and I want everything to be the same. I only did this so that we would have enough money to do everything we wanted, like finish renovating the house. I thought it would just be one night, Bill would get over it, and we could carry on as if nothing had happened. What planet do you live on? If I had pulled off such a thing, Frank would have killed us all, and then probably died himself. You're lucky that Bill is so level-headed and just divorces you. Now, if you don't mind, I need to get a busy family. It's almost time to pick up the kids from school. Norma returned home that night. Norma told Frank about her conversation with Cindy, and after Frank stopped laughing, he told her that if she had done such a thing, she would already be dead. Bill drove all Saturday and Sunday to get as far away from Cindy as possible. On Monday, he stopped at a supermarket and bought 3 new SIM cards for his and his children's phones. They spent the next hour entering the numbers they wanted to keep and threw away the old cards. Now only those whom they informed about the new numbers could call them. The children also called their mother to set up a Twitter video call, as their father had instructed. "Hi kids, how are you? I miss you so much. Is Daddy nearby?" "Hey Mom, we're fine. Dad is here. But he doesn't want to talk to you, and neither do we, but Dad forces him. He said that you are still our mother and you love us, but we don't feel it. You abandoned us, just like your dad. Well, we called you like Daddy ordered, so bye, Mom." Monday. Cindy went to work as usual, expecting to hear from Paul, but by the end of the day, Paul had not contacted her, and she began to worry. Paul's company offered Gary $2 million to settle the case out of court. Gary asked for $8 million. They offered 4. Gary asked for 7. They offered 5. Gary accepted. Bill was now a very wealthy man. The alienation of affection suit against Paul was unsuccessful as expected, but it achieved its goal of embarrassing Paul at the reception. Several weeks passed without much event. Cindy continued to try to stop the divorce and get the children back, but neither the authorities nor her private investigator could find a single lead, mainly because they were looking for Bill's truck, which was hidden from prying eyes in Frank's workshop. Bill finally made it to Oregon to meet his contact and pick up false documents proving that he and the children were Canadian citizens. After a couple more days of persistent driving, Bill reached his aunt's house. It was a large 4-bedroom house, mostly built of logs, with several acres of land, which gave them some privacy. Aunt Mary was delighted to see us. The children had not seen her for almost 10 years. There were hugs, and then she led us into the dining room. "Sit down, I'll cook us lunch, and you can tell me everything." Bill. After lunch, which was great after the road food, we all sat down to talk. Each of us told our own story. After we told our version, my aunt looked disgusted and asked what we were going to do next. I explained that we needed to place the children in a local school to complete their education. I also talked about my intention to start a new business and find a house nearby. The aunt said she could help get the children into the local schools since she volunteered on the education board and asked that it be left to her. She then showed us to our rooms and left us to unpack. True to her word, Aunt Mary enrolled Mike and Lindy in the local school, which was only a mile away. The children quickly adjusted to the new routine and studied well. I registered the children under their real names to avoid problems upon release. In a few weeks, I looked into local engineering companies to see if there was a niche I could fill without upsetting the local balance. I wanted to complement the local engineering environment rather than compete with it. Having discovered that there were no specialized auto repair shops or customization shops within a 30-mile radius, I bought a large warehouse on the outskirts of the city and began to equip it. I placed advertisements in all the local newspapers and at the employment agency. I made it clear that I was willing to hire ex-cons if they followed the rules. I was inundated with applications the first week, so I began the interview process. Initially, I hired 30 people and kept another 20 in reserve. The local probation service took a keen interest in what I was doing and provided a lot of help in referring to suitable wards. When I started this business, I operated under my own name to avoid problems in the future. I kept in touch with my friend Frank and my lawyer, who informed me that Cindy was still working at the gallery and had given up searching for me, and that the authorities were no longer interested in my whereabouts. Cindy was convicted of having sex for money, but since it was her first offense, she was given a $2,000 fine and 3 months of community service. She would still have a criminal record, and the chances of getting custody of the children were extremely slim. It had been almost a year since I left the town of Justin, and Christmas was approaching. I decided that the risk was low and that I could take the children to their parents for the holidays. I made plans with my father without telling my mother, as she would not be able to keep the secret. The whole family will be there, and my friends Frank and Norma will also be invited to Christmas tea. Mike and Lindy were almost 18 and would be starting their first year at university in Halifax the following fall. Mike studied engineering and computer science, and Lindy studied law and business. I forced them to maintain contact with their mother, and it seemed that some kind of truce had been achieved. Conversations became longer and more friendly, ending with "love you" from both sides. I thought it was time to meet my mother and break down the barriers between them. To do this, I needed to find out if Cindy would be visiting her parents for the holidays, so I contacted Norma to find out. Norma was glad that we would come and that the children would see their mother. She said that Cindy always asked for updates about us and seemed genuinely remorseful for her behavior. Thanks to the sale of my last 2 patents, I became a very rich man. My new business continued to grow, and I now had over 70 employees, most of whom were ex-convicts. My annual pre-tax income was over $2 million and growing. To thank my aunt for everything she did for us, I paid off her mortgage and invited her to come with us to visit her sister. She hugged me so tightly that I could hardly breathe. I thought we might need more time in our old town, and therefore needed a permanent place to stay. With this thought in mind, I asked my father if he was ready to build a new house for me on the site of the old one. He, of course, agreed, and I sent him the plans for my new house, which he promised to finish by next summer. With the holidays approaching, I planned a private jet ride to the nearest airport and a limo to my parents' door. The limousine will be at my disposal throughout the holidays. The driver was single and had no family, so didn't mind working on holidays. I booked him a room at the Holiday Inn, and he would work from there. The day before Christmas Eve, we boarded a plane at 9 in the morning and arrived at our parents' house at 2 in the afternoon. Mom went crazy when she saw us and almost strangled the children and her aunt, whom she had not seen for almost 12 years. Having learned that the driver would be alone on Christmas Day, she insisted that he come for lunch and stay for tea. I thought I saw a tear in his eye, but he quickly turned away. I'm sure if Mom had room, she would have insisted he stay with us. Christmas Eve and Boxing Day were the best I remember. We all drank too much and fell asleep after dinner, even the driver. Norma told me that Cindy would be visiting her parents for the holidays, so I arranged for a driver to pick Mike, Lindy, and me up after breakfast on Boxing Day. We drove to Cindy's parents' house and arrived just in time for lunch. Someone saw a limousine pull up to the house, and Trevor opened the door and got out before the limousine stopped. My driver, seeing the luxury property and correctly judging Trevor as a selfish snob, put on his chauffeur's hat, got out of the limousine, opened the door, and stood at attention as I walked out. Trevor's face was the closest thing to a picture incredible. When Mike and Lindy came out, he smiled and hugged them, looked at me, and extended his hand, which I shook enthusiastically. "Bill, it's so nice to see you and the kids. Do you want to stay for lunch? I understand that Cindy is here. Does the offer still stand? If not, I'll leave the kids here and I'll pick them up later." "Give me a minute, I'll check." While he went inside, I walked up to my driver. "Thanks for that, you got it right." The driver simply smiled. I've met them 100 times. At that moment, Trevor reappeared. Bill, you are more than welcome. Please come in. I took $200 bills out of my wallet and handed them to the driver. We passed by the hotel, rested there, ate and relaxed. I'll call you when it's time to go back. I watched as the limo pulled out of the driveway and drove away, wondering what I had gotten myself into. We entered the house, took off our outerwear, and went into the living room. Linda rushed to the children and tried to crush them in her arms. I thought I heard them cracking ribs. Then she came up to me and hugged me. Thank you for bringing your grandchildren. We missed them so much. I glanced at Cindy, who was hugging the children, who returned her hugs with less enthusiasm. When she released them, she looked at me and said, Thank you, Bill. This is the best gift ever. I know what you're thinking, but I really missed them. She came over to me, kissed me on the cheek, and sat down again. The conversation was a little tense at the beginning, but gradually warmed up until we all felt comfortable with each other. Cindy told the children about her job and where she lived, and hoped that they would visit her in the summer, but no promises were made. After lunch, which consisted of leftover Christmas dinner and fresh scones, washed down with brandy and coffee, Cindy asked me to speak to her privately, and I agreed. We grabbed our cups of coffee and walked into the library, sat across from each other, and just looked at each other before talking. I was surprised that I no longer felt resentment, hatred, or anything towards Cindy. I looked closely at Cindy and asked, So what's next? Bill, I've wanted to talk to you for so long about what happened, and now I don't know what to say except that I'm so sorry and I wish this had never happened. I have no excuses. I was a selfish bitch who hurt you more than I realized at the time. I don't ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I know we will never be together again, but please, could we at least be friends? Cindy, I didn't come here for your apology, but I accept it, and as for forgiveness, you got it. I'm not sure about friendship. We'll see how it goes, but the kids have forgiven you, so you have a chance to reconnect with them. I never spoke badly about you in front of them. They made their own conclusions, and you will have to live with it, but do not miss this chance. I will help you as best I can, but it will take time. I still have not forgiven Gaudier and will achieve my revenge sooner or later. I loved you more than life itself and was ready to die for you, and you threw it all away for Gaudier and his money. So was it worth it? No, Bill, I shouldn't have, and I regret it every day, every morning when I wake up. I cry every night before I go to sleep and drink to forget. After our parting, there was no one else, and I think there never will be. You are a high bar to follow. As for Paul Gauthier, you obviously don't know, but he's dead. He was killed about 3 months ago. He repeated the same trick with another couple in his cabin, but this time the husband turned out to be a former Green Beret. He killed Max and his wife, then set the house on fire. So there is no more revenge here. What happened to your husband? He disappeared into the forest and has not been seen since. The police said that with his training, they would probably never find him. Mike came into the room and asked if he and Lindy could stay at Grandma's for a couple of days. I agreed for 2 days, then said that I would send a car to pick them up. Cindy said she would be happy to drive them herself if that suited me. I didn't see Cindy's Lexus outside, just an old Ford, so I asked where her car was. Oh, I sold the Lexus. I needed the money. This old Ford is all I can afford, but Frank maintains it, so it's reliable. Okay, Cindy, if it's okay, Mom and Dad will probably enjoy seeing you too, so I'll see you in a couple of days. I called the driver to pick me up and said goodbye. Trevor and Linda told me not to be a stranger and to come more often. I went out to wait for my car, and just then Cindy came up to me. Bill, is there anyone special in your life? Well, if that's what interests you, then no, there hasn't been anyone since you. I just didn't feel the need. Here's my car. Goodbye, Cindy. On the way home, I called Frank and made the purchase for delivery the next day. When I got home, I explained to my mom that Cindy would be bringing the kids in a couple of days and asked her to be nice for the sake of the kids. My sister made a rude gesture, but promised to be good and not kill Cindy right away. The next day, there was a knock on the door at Cindy's parents' house. Linda opened the door and saw Frank. "Hey, Frank, have you come to see Bill at your mom's house?" "No, I'm not going to see Bill. I'd like to see Cindy if possible." Cindy came to the door and asked what Frank wanted. "Hey, Cindy, I have a delivery for you from Bill." He waved for her to go outside, and there, in the driveway, stood a 2-year-old Lexus with a ribbon strung across the roof. Norma had just finished tying the ribbon and handed Cindy the envelope. Inside was a Christmas card that said, "For old time's sake," signed, Bill. Cindy hugged Norma and cried, then whispered, "Does that mean he still cares about me?" "I wouldn't bet on it, but it looks like it." When Cindy brought the children back to Bill's parents, she was greeted warmly and invited to stay for tea. There was a certain tension in communication with Karen, but she kept her mouth shut, as she promised. When Bill, Mike, and Lindy came out to say goodbye to Cindy, she hugged Bill, kissed him, and thanked him for the car, then drove off. Mike and Lindy exchanged sly glances, but Bill said, "No need to draw conclusions from this. We are just working on being friends for your sake." A week later, we were back in Canada. Mike and Lindy were back at school, and everything was back to normal. Mike thought they should see him and Cindy's parents more often, but renting a private jet all the time would be a waste of money. If he had his own plane, it would be useful for his business and personal life, so he began to explore the possibility of buying an airplane. He eventually chose a Cessna 425 and placed the order. He decided that having a permanent pilot would be wasteful as he would not be needed often, and he did not like the idea of hiring someone else he did not know. So the alternative was to learn to fly yourself. Within 8 months, he had an all-weather multi-engine aircraft license, meaning he could fly at night, as darkness was considered a weather condition. The following summer, Bill's father called to say the house was ready. Bill arrived on a commercial flight because he had not yet completed his pilot training. He stayed with his parents and asked his mother to help him choose furniture for his new home. She said she would be happy to help, but it would be better if a young woman like Cindy helped. He realized that his mother was up to something, but he agreed with her proposal and called Cindy, who agreed enthusiastically. Bill rented a car and picked Cindy up from her apartment, and they went shopping to fully furnish the house. The house had 5 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, a dining room, and a large family room, a basement that Bill intended to use as an office man cave, with a 2-bedroom guest apartment above the garage. It also included a swimming pool and a separate workshop. Cindy was in her element, running from store to store, making sure everything was aesthetically pleasing and went together. She asked to see the house, and when Bill showed it to her, she was delighted. He showed her the guest apartment and asked what she thought of it. "She's beautiful, Bill, but we haven't bought any furniture for her. We'll have to go shopping again later in the week. Why didn't you tell me about the apartment?" "Well, Cindy, the fact is that I will be dividing my time between this house and my company in Canada. I don't want the house to be empty when I'm away, so I was wondering if you would like to live in this apartment for free and look after the house while I'm away. You could use the entire territory and the pool, and this would allow you to save on rent. I'll even offer you an extra fuel allowance for the extra distance to work. What do you think?" "I think this is a great idea, Bill. Thank you very much. But why are you so kind to me after what I did to you? First a car, now a home. I do not deserve this. Cindy, I already told you that I forgive you, and we have children. It would be nice if you were nearby when they arrived. And honestly, I still love you, even though I tried not to. Before you say anything, I am not looking for reconciliation. Although I have forgiven you, I cannot forget what you did. Do you think we could be friends, even if it's just for the kids? Bill, I love you too, and I would do anything to be with you, even if it's just as a friend." "So you accept the apartment?" "Yes, I accept the apartment, even if it's just to be close to you." "In that case, we need to go shopping to furnish it. Choose whatever you want. This is your apartment. Furnish it to your taste." Since there wasn't even a coffee maker in the house, we went to a local diner to eat. After a delicious steak, we were drinking coffee, and I noticed that Cindy was quietly crying. "Cindy, what happened? I thought you were happy helping me set up my house. What did I do wrong?" "Silly, I'm just a little sad thinking that all of this could have been ours instead of yours if I hadn't been so stupid and selfish. I'm also crying because I'm so happy to be with you and enjoy a simple dinner out. I haven't been to a restaurant since the last time you took me out, and I love it so much that I don't want it to end." I looked at Cindy and gently squeezed her hand. "We'll do it again soon, I promise. And maybe go dancing to really cap off the evening, if that suits you." "I'd really like that. Just tell me when." Over the next few weeks, we went out together several times, and even went dancing a couple of times. I felt like I was happy again being with Cindy, and it was almost the same as before, but when she tried to push things further, I pulled back. I simply could not get rid of the image of her betrayal. Eventually, it became so painful that I decided to return to Canada. "Cindy, the last few weeks have been some of my happiest since our divorce, and I feel confused about our relationship. Every time I get close to you, I see you cheating on me with that bastard, and it brings everything back. I need time to sort out my feelings for you and decide what to do, if anything. So I'm going back to Canada. I need to show up from time to time anyway." "I understand what you are saying, but let me tell you that I am not that selfish woman anymore. I really learned my lesson. I won't pressure you into giving more than you want. I just hope you give me a chance to show you how much I love you. Please let me know when you get there and keep in touch." The next morning, I flew back to Canada and went back to work. On my first day of work, I looked at my mailbox and found it empty. I asked my assistant what needed to be done, and she said that everything had already been done. She ran the company like clockwork in my absence, and I had nothing to do. I devoted myself entirely to learning to fly. Christmas was approaching, and we decided to spend it in our new home. There will be 4 of us: me, Mike, Lindy, and Aunt. I would pilot us to the nearest airport, where a rental car would meet us for the rest of the trip. As before, the same driver met us at the plane exit with the same limousine. When we arrived at the new house, Cindy ran out to meet us and hugged everyone. Mike and Lindy smiled slyly as Cindy hugged me and didn't let go for a long time. The next day, we went to our parents for Christmas dinner. On Christmas Day, Cindy's parents came over after breakfast to stay for lunch, and it was as if the last few years had never happened. In a few days, I needed to meet with an attorney regarding business assets that I was planning to purchase. It turned out that this process would take several weeks, and I had to remain in the city until the deal was completed. Mike and Lindy had to go back to university, so they took a commercial flight with Aunt Mary. We all said goodbye and returned to our parents. After a hearty dinner, Cindy and I returned home. We sat and watched the snow fall and settle in the garden, drinking wine. We just sat in silence, enjoying each other's company. When it became dark and the garden was no longer visible, we went upstairs to sleep. We didn't talk, we just went into the master bedroom, undressed, and got into bed. I looked at Cindy and noticed that she had tears streaming down her face. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Can we just hug and go to sleep? Forgive me too. Let's sleep and talk in the morning." I woke up and noticed that Cindy was not in bed. The door was open, and I smelled a delicious breakfast. I went downstairs to find Cindy in just a t-shirt cooking bacon and eggs. After breakfast, Cindy went to work, and I went to a meeting to discuss a deal I wanted to make. I spent the rest of the day with Frank, telling him about last night. He suggested that we contact a psychologist and discuss everything. He also said how happy he and Norma would be if Cindy and I got back together. That night, Cindy and I sat and talked about the previous night and decided that Frank was probably right and we needed to make an appointment for counseling. She asked how my meeting went, and I said that I couldn't say anything yet. When we went to bed, we kissed a little and then fell asleep in each other's arms. I was still confused. I was still angry at Cindy, but I felt like we were starting to get closer again, and it brought me a sense of peace. Over the next few weeks, my meetings continued, and the nights became increasingly pleasant. leaving me with warm feelings. We went to counseling twice a week, and it helped not only me, but also Cindy, to understand the depth of the pain caused to me. At one of the sessions, after talking with Cindy alone, the psychologist invited me back and saw Cindy sitting and crying. She looked at me and threw herself into my arms. "Bill, I'm so sorry. I was so stupid and selfish. Only now do I realize how much I hurt you. If you want to end this, I promise to never contact you again, and I will move to another state so you will never see me again. I don't know how you could touch me, let alone make love to me after what I did. Cindy, I know you are truly sorry, and I have forgiven you. I understand that I am falling in love with you again, but I need time to come to terms with what you did. If you can be patient, I'm sure we can get through this and get back at least some of what we had. I'll wait forever if I have to. I just want everything to be like it was before I ruined everything." The psychologist said we were making excellent progress and looked forward to our next meeting. The next day, Cindy came home looking worried. It turned out that her gallery had been bought, and the new management was going to expand it by annexing the neighboring building. The existing gallery will be closed for several months for renovations, but all staff will be paid during the work, so Cindy was home indefinitely. I invited her to come with me to Canada to see my factory and stay in my second home. She couldn't wait to leave, so we informed everyone of our plans and prepared to leave the following Saturday. Her parents took us to the airport and were impressed with my plane. We said goodbye and boarded the plane. Cindy sat next to me and asked what all these devices meant. She was like a child on a plane for the first time. We flew over the lake where Gaudier's house was, but could not see it from such a height. About 20 minutes later, the left engine temperature light came on and beeped. I turned off the left engine and reported an emergency and began looking for the nearest airfield. I wasn't too worried since the plane could fly on one engine. I was looking for a suitable airfield on the map when the right engine coughed and died. I restarted the left engine, although the overheat warning was still on. I was now really starting to worry and was looking for a place to land. I told Cindy to move back, but she refused. Smoke began to come out of the left engine when I saw a long stretch of brush in the forest with no trees. I decided to land the plane on its belly, since the landing gear could get caught and turn us over. I transmitted the latest emergency message, indicating our location as accurately as possible. I tried to land at the beginning of the bush, hoping to stop before we hit the trees. We landed at a slight angle to prevent the nose from digging into the ground and flipping the plane over. There was a terrible noise as we slid along the ground. The trees were approaching with terrifying speed, and I knew that we would not stop in time. We skidded between the first few trees, tearing off the wings and causing the fuel to catch fire. The last thing I remember is a tree right in front of us, then darkness. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but when I opened my eyes, the first thing I thought about was Cindy. I looked to my right, but she wasn't there, just an empty chair. My head hurt terribly, and so did my leg, and I lost consciousness again. When I opened my eyes again, I was in the open air and saw a disheveled man leaning over me. "Try not to move. You have a broken leg and a bad head bruise. You're lucky to be alive." I managed to croak one word. "Cindy?" "She's in better shape than you. She has a dislocated shoulder and some bruises, but is otherwise fine." I lost consciousness again. When I woke up, I saw Cindy bending over me and dabbing my head with a cloth. "Oh, Bill, I'm so glad you woke up. I was so worried about you. But Peter said you'll get better. He splinted your leg, so don't try to move. How are you feeling? You look terrible." "I feel terrible. How long have I been unconscious?" 2 days. Did you see any sign of a search party?" "No, and Peter won't let me light the signal fire." "Why?" He does not speak. Then a voice came from behind. "Because I'm on the run. I killed 3 people and have been hiding ever since." I thought about his words, and it dawned on me. This was the same Green Beret who killed his wife, Max, and Paul Gauthier. "You killed your wife, Gaudier, and his bodyguard Max, didn't you?" "How did you know that?" That bastard tried to pull the same trick on us a couple of years ago, and I sent Max to the hospital. It destroyed our marriage, but we are working to repair it. I flew to Canada to spend time together and work on our relationship. Why didn't you just kill that bastard like I did? It would have saved me a lot of trouble. In some ways, I regret not doing it, but I'm not a killer. I can fight, but I've never killed anyone. I'm sorry your life was ruined, and I'm partly responsible for it, but I think I can help you. How are you going to do this? My description is everywhere. Let me think. I'm sure we can come up with something. After a few weeks, I was able to walk with a cane and no longer had constant headaches, so we began to move towards civilization. During the entire time we were in the forest, we did not see any signs of the search party. Peter said we were about 500 yards from the road, and he would leave us here to make our own way. I asked him to mark the trees so we could find the place again. I told him to come in a week, and then every Sunday after sunset, and I would help him get out of the country. He agreed with my proposal and said that he would do as I asked, then said goodbye and left. After about an hour, we managed to stop the car and explain who we were. The driver turned out to be an off-duty sheriff and took us straight to the hospital. Of course, the media was everywhere, and we became celebrities for a few days. Our parents came to visit us, and we had a Twitter video call with the kids. A week later, we were discharged and returned home. When the sheriff asked how we survived, we explained that we were helped by an old bearded man who said that he had lived in the forest all his life. This explanation satisfied the sheriff, and he left. The following Sunday, I drove to the meeting place and parked along the road. A few minutes later, Peter climbed into the car, and we headed home. When we arrived, the first thing he wanted was a shower. Cindy cooked him his first proper meal since he ran away. We put Peter in an apartment above the garage, and if anyone asked, he was our caretaker and gardener. We continued this lie for a couple of months. Meanwhile, the gallery was ready, and its grand opening was planned for the following Saturday. Cindy was a little nervous because it would be her first time meeting her new boss. On Saturday morning, I told Cindy that I would not be able to attend the opening because I had an urgent meeting regarding a property I was considering purchasing. She was upset, of course, but she didn't make a drama out of it, unlike the old Cindy, who would have gotten angry. That evening, Cindy waited in front of the gallery with about 100 people, including our parents, members of the media, and several VIPs. When the Bentley stopped in front of the gallery, the doorman opened the door to let the new owner out. I walked out of the Bentley to see the shock on Cindy's face and the smiles of our families knew about my plan. I walked up to Cindy and handed her a certificate of ownership in her name. The new owner of the gallery is Cindy. That night we made love for the first time, and that meant we were on the right track. The following week, I received a new Cessna plane because I was cleared of responsibility for the crash. Upon investigation, it turned out that the fuel was contaminated, but fortunately mine was the only plane refueled from that tank. I didn't lose contact with my former friends, so getting a fake passport and Canadian documents wasn't a problem. Once they were delivered, I made a plan to return to Canada. Cindy was too busy furnishing the new gallery with paintings and sculptures to come with us, so Peter and I went together. When we arrived at my Canadian home, I asked Peter what he planned to do next in life. He said he didn't know, but he had a business management degree that he could no longer use under his old name. I suggested that he go back to school and study in Canada, and I would offer him a job. 8 years have passed. I returned to my home in the US permanently. Peter got a degree in business management and married a sweet divorcee with 2 children whom he adores. I gave him my old house, and now he runs the company I built. Cindy and I have 3 grandchildren whom we adore. We now live in the same house as husband and wife, although we are not married and do not plan to. After all these years, life finally got better. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.